welcome to Nocturnal Tales. Tonight we drift into Venice, where even the postman must cross a bridge. Every alley looks guilty after sunset, and a palace rising pink and white from the Grand Canal may contain more secrets than plumbing. The cat, the mouse, and the Madonna begins at the Palazzo Varano, where the formidable Contessa Bianca Varano, a widow in black silk, armed with pearls, temper, and ancestral disappointment, has summoned a celebrated detective because her family Madonna has vanished. A brilliant copy has appeared in its place, and the thief has left behind a note signed with a crowned black cat. This is a story about art, inheritance, vanity, and the foolish things people do when beauty is mistaken for ownership. About an American collector with too many dollars, a nephew with debts and sentiment, a restorer with blue pigment on her sleeve, a secretary who forges badly in the name of loyalty, and a gentleman thief who objects not to being accused, but to being imitated without style. It is also, beneath the Venetian comedy, a story about provenance, that awkward word which asks whether a treasured object has been loved for centuries or merely kept for centuries by the wrong people. As always, this tale is inspired by the spirit of the great Golden Age crime writers, but the plot, characters, and text you're about to hear are entirely our own creation, though the historical epilogue at the end draws very loosely on the real exploits of Vincenzo Pipino, Venice's notorious gentleman thief, whose most famous crime involved a Madonna, the Doge's palace, and the kind of theatrical audacity only Venice could make plausible. To listen to this entire mystery ad-free, and to unlock next week's case early, join our inner circle on Patreon for just $2.99 a month. The direct link is the very first one in the description below. Now settle in as the gondola turns into the Grand Canal. The Contessa loads her first accusation like artillery, and a detective studies an empty gilt frame and observes that this crime may have been signed by a cat, but it was almost certainly written by a mouse. Chapter 1. The Madonna Who Took the Air. I have always maintained that Venice is a city designed less for convenience than for opera. A man cannot post a letter, purchase a pair of socks, or pursue a criminal without finding himself obliged to cross a bridge, hire a boat, or stand dramatically beneath a crumbling balcony while bells ring overhead. This may be charming to poets. To a retired officer accustomed to streets that behave like streets, it is occasionally trying. Poirot, however, approved of Venice. "It is a city, Hastings," he said, "that has understood the importance of appearance." He was seated opposite me in a gondola, wrapped in a light overcoat, his patent leather shoes protected from the Venetian damp by an arrangement of rugs which he had supervised with the gravity of a field marshal. The gondolier, a long melancholy fellow with the face of a tragedian and the shoulders of a laundryman, propelled us through a narrow canal between walls the colour of old tobacco. "Appearance?" I said. "I should have thought it was a city of mystery." Poirot smiled. "Precisely. Mystery is appearance badly explained." I was still considering this pronouncement when the gondola turned a corner and emerged upon the Grand Canal. There, before us, rising pink and white from the water like a wedding cake in danger of collapse, stood the Palazzo Varano. It belonged, so our note had informed us, to the Contessa Bianca Varano, widow of an Italian nobleman, patroness of the arts, and possessor of a temper which had once caused 3 tenors to resign from the same charity concert. We had come to Venice for rest. That, at least, had been Poirot's intention. Mine had included rest, certainly, but also a modest amount of sunshine, good wine, and the contemplation of dark-eyed Italian ladies from a respectful distance. Instead, on our second morning, there had arrived at our hotel a card engraved in violet ink. Contessa Bianca Varano requests the immediate presence of Monsieur Hercule Poirot. A theft has occurred. The police are idiots. The matter is delicate. Beneath it, in a firmer hand, had been added, "Come before luncheon. After luncheon I may forgive everybody, which would be disastrous." "One sees," said Poirot, "that Madame la Contessa has character." "One sees," I replied, "that she has no manners." "My friend, the two are often confused by those who possess only one." We were received by a butler who looked as though he had been inherited with the palace and dusted twice a year. He conducted us through rooms of faded magnificence, mirrors clouded with age, chandeliers like frozen waterfalls, portraits of gentlemen in armour who appeared to disapprove of central heating. At last we entered a salon overlooking the canal. The Contessa Varano stood in the centre of it. She was a formidable woman of perhaps 65, tall, powdered, and dressed in black silk, with a rope of pearls large enough to anchor a fishing boat. Her nose was Roman, her eyes were Venetian, and her voice was pure artillery. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, "you are smaller than I expected." Poirot bowed. "Madame, I am exactly the size required." The Contessa stared at him for 1 second, then gave a crack of laughter. "Good. You will do. And this?" "Captain Hastings, my friend and colleague." "English?" "Entirely," I said. "Then he may stand by the window and look honest. It is useful in a house full of Italians." I began to protest, but Poirot gently pressed my arm. "One does not interrupt a cannon, Hastings. One waits for the smoke to clear." The Contessa swept to a small easel placed near the fireplace. Upon it rested an empty gilt frame. "There," she said, "you perceive the outrage." I perceived a frame. Poirot leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "A painting has been removed." "Removed!" cried the Contessa. "Monsieur, paintings are removed by servants changing the hangings. This was seduced." Seduced? It left in the night, and in its place was discovered this. She clapped her hands. The butler approached carrying a silver tray. Upon it lay a small painted panel, wrapped in tissue. Poirot uncovered it. It showed the Madonna and Child in the old Venetian style, serene, golden, luminous. Even I, who am no expert in art beyond knowing that a horse should have 4 legs and a landscape, preferably a horizon, saw that it was beautiful. "But surely," I began, "this is the painting?" The Contessa turned on me with pity. "There. The Englishman has spoken." Poirot did not smile. He was studying the panel closely. "It is a copy," he said. "A brilliant copy," said the Contessa. "So brilliant that my nephew Carlo kissed it this morning and declared it more spiritual than the original. Carlo has debts and no eye." "I heard that," said a languid voice from the doorway. A young man of 30 entered, handsome in the defeated manner of aristocrats who have been too well dressed since birth. He wore a cream suit and an expression of permanent financial apology. "Aunt Bianca, I kissed nothing. I merely said the copy had charm. You owe 3,000 lire to a man who sells motor cars with yellow upholstery. Your opinions are naturally diseased." Carlo bowed to us. "Signor Poirot, Captain. Welcome to the madhouse. You arrive in time for the second act." "There has been already a first?" asked Poirot. "My aunt discovered the theft. She accused me, her secretary, the American collector, the restorer, the maid, the cook, and the bishop." "The bishop had motive," said the Contessa. "He has always wanted the Madonna for the chapel." "He also has gout," said Carlo, "and cannot climb stairs." "Gout is no alibi. It is merely an inconvenience." Poirot raised a hand. "Permit that we proceed with order. What exactly has been stolen?" The Contessa drew herself up. "The Madonna of San Lazzaro, late 15th century, school of Bellini. It has belonged to my husband's family for 400 years. It was to be exhibited tonight at the charity reception in the Doge's palace before being sold privately to an American gentleman with more money than restraint." "Sold?" I asked. She gave me a look. One does not sell family treasures, Captain Hastings. One transfers them to barbarians in exchange for the survival of the roof. And when was it last seen? Asked Poirot. Last night at 11, here in this room. The restorer had finished examining it. The frame was sealed. The doors were locked. The windows open only upon the canal, unless the thief had wings or an excellent boatman. And this copy? Found in its place at 8 this morning. Poirot examined the back of the panel. Ah. The Contessa stiffened. You have seen something? A note. He detached a small card from the backing and read aloud. With gratitude for the loan of your excellent Madonna. She was suffocating in bad company. I shall return her when she has recovered her dignity. It was signed only with a small drawing of a black cat wearing a coronet. Carlo groaned. Oh, splendid. You recognize the signature? I asked. The young man lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. Everyone in Venice recognizes it? The Contessa's mouth tightened. Il gatto nobile, she said. The noble cat. Poirot's eyebrows rose. A thief? A parasite, said the Contessa. A genius, said Carlo. A parasite with good handwriting, said the Contessa. For 3 years he has robbed palaces, villas, churches, and one Swiss banker who deserved it. Always art, always jewels, never money. He leaves notes. He returns some things. He keeps others. The police cannot catch him because half Venice admires him and the other half has bought from him. And you believe he has taken your Madonna? I believe, said the Contessa, that someone wishes me to believe it. Poirot looked at her with approval. Très bien. That is already more intelligent than many clients become after 6 chapters. Carlo blinked. 6 what? Nothing, I said hastily. At that moment there came from the hall a crash, followed by a female cry and a rapid burst of Italian. A young woman appeared at the doorway carrying a broken vase in both hands. She was pretty, fair-haired, and flustered, with large frightened eyes and the air of someone who had been born apologizing. I am so sorry, Contessa. The footman startled me and I— My Ming vase, said the Contessa, with unnatural calm. The girl went white. Carlo sprang forward. Bianca! It was cracked already. It was cracked by Napoleon's troops in 1797. That was historical. This is merely incompetent. Poirot had turned sharply, not to the vase, but to the girl's sleeve. A smear of dark blue pigment marked the cuff. Signorina, he said gently, you are an artist. She looked at him in surprise. I restore paintings. I am Emma Fielding. English? I asked, brightening. Half English. My father was from Bath. The Contessa made a dismissive gesture. Miss Fielding was cleaning the Madonna last night. She says the copy is not hers. Emma flushed. Because it is not. No one has accused you yet, said Carlo. My dear Carlo, said the Contessa, in this house everyone is accused from breakfast onward. It saves time. Poirot smiled, but his eyes remained grave. Madame la Contessa, who slept in the palazzo last night? Myself, Carlo, Miss Fielding, my secretary, Signor Bellavita, 3 servants, also Mr. Ezra Poundstone, the American collector, who stayed after dinner because he feared the fog. Poundstone, I repeated. A vulgar name, said the Contessa, but he pays in dollars. Poirot walked to the window and looked down at the green water lapping against the palace steps. A delivery boat passed, piled high with vegetables. Somewhere, a church bell struck noon. A locked room, I said. A famous thief. A copy exchanged for an original. A palace full of suspects. It is positively magnificent. Poirot turned from the window. No, Hastings, it is positively arranged. Arranged? Yes. The great mistake of criminals is that they are artists when they should be accountants. They compose the beautiful scene, they forget the ugly detail. And what is the ugly detail here? Poirot tapped the little card with the black cat. This thief, this gatto nobile, he has wit, yes. Vanity, certainly. But this note— He shook his head. It is not written by a cat. The Contessa frowned. Then by whom? Poirot looked from the empty frame to the copied Madonna, from Emma's stained cuff to Carlo's trembling cigarette, and finally to the canal, where Venice glittered with all the innocence of a city that had lied for 1,000 years. By a mouse, he said, and that, madame, is much more dangerous. Chapter 2. The American Who Bought Too Much. Mr. Ezra Poundstone was discovered in the breakfast room doing violence to a boiled egg. He was a large American gentleman with a square pink face, a collar of heroic stiffness, and the air of a man who believed Europe had been constructed chiefly to provide him with anecdotes. Before him stood 3 guidebooks, 2 cups of coffee, and a silver toast rack, which he had mistaken for a modern sculpture. "Ah," he boomed as we entered. "The detective. Say, this is first-rate. I always wanted to be robbed in Venice. Gives a man something to remember besides churches and damp sheets." The Contessa, who had accompanied us, stiffened. "You have not been robbed, Mr. Poundstone. I have." "That's so, Countess, that's so, but I was emotionally adjacent." Poirot bowed with delicacy. "Monsieur Poundstone, I understand you intended to purchase the Madonna." "Intended?" Poundstone slapped the table. "My dear sir, I had practically purchased her in my soul. I was going to hang her in my house in Chicago between a Flemish martyrdom and a staircase. Electric lights on her, naturally, very reverent." The Contessa closed her eyes, as if struck internally. Poirot seated himself. "You saw the painting last night?" "I did. Beautiful thing. Soft face, little baby, golden background, the sort of picture that improves a man just by owning it." "An interesting theory of morality," murmured Poirot. "And after dinner?" "After dinner I examined her with Miss Fielding and the Countess. Then there was some talk of the price, some talk of insurance, and quite a lot of Italian spoken at me like machine-gun fire. I went to bed around midnight." "Your room?" "Second floor, facing the side canal. Had a fine view of a wall and another fellow's laundry." "You heard nothing?" "I heard Venice. Water slapping, bells ringing, cats conducting private business, and somebody singing like he owed money." "Did you leave your room?" "No, sir." "Can anyone confirm that?" Mr. Poundstone considered this with American honesty. "No, but I sleep in red flannel nightwear, and I challenge any jury in Europe to believe I went burgling dressed like a fire." Poirot received this statement gravely. Hastings regrettably did not. I coughed into my glove. The Contessa said, "You wished the painting, that is motive." "Countess, I wished to buy it." "Buying," she said, "is merely theft performed with stationery." Poundstone grinned. "Now that's good. I'll write that down." Poirot's eyes moved to the guidebooks. "You are fond of Venice, monsieur?" "Getting fonder. At first I thought it was a place where streets had failed, but it grows on you." "Like mildew," said the Contessa. "Exactly," said Poundstone, missing nothing and understanding less. Poirot rose. "I should like to see your room later." "Certainly, though if you find a Bellini under the mattress, I'll be more surprised than you." We left him buttering toast with the concentration of a surgeon. In the corridor, the Contessa halted before a tall, narrow man in a grey suit. He seemed to have been pressed flat by years of service. His hair was black, his complexion olive, and his expression one of official sorrow. He carried a leather folder clasped to his chest. "Bella vita," said the Contessa. "Monsieur Poirot wishes to ask questions. Answer them truthfully unless truth would bore him." Signor Bellavita inclined his head. I am always at Monsieur Poirot's disposal. There was something too smooth in his voice. Not false exactly. Polished, like a marble step worn dangerous by use. You are the Contessa's secretary? Asked Poirot. For 12 years. And last night? I locked the salon after Miss Fielding finished her work. You personally? Yes. The Contessa keeps the key. I saw her place it in the drawer of her writing table. The Contessa snapped, a drawer which was locked. Of course, Contessa. Poirot's moustaches stirred. And the windows? Closed at 10 because of the fog. Later perhaps opened again, I cannot say. I ordered them opened, said the Contessa. Paintings suffer from bad air. So do detectives, I said, thinking of the narrow canal smell. Poirot gave me a look. Bellavita continued. At 11:30 I retired to my room. Where is your room? Above the library, not near the salon. You heard nothing? Only the Contessa shouting at her nephew. The Contessa shrugged. That proves nothing. I shout at Carlo as others breathe. And why did you shout? Asked Poirot. Because Carlo wished me to delay the sale. Bellavita's eyes flicked very slightly toward her. Poirot caught it. You disagree? I do not presume. That is not an answer. It is furniture. For the first time, Bellavita colored. Signor Carlo felt that the picture should remain in the family. It is a natural sentiment. It is a costly sentiment, said the Contessa. And Carlo's sentiments are always paid by other people. We found Carlo in the music room, lying on a sofa beneath a ceiling full of painted cherubs. He was reading a French novel upside down, which struck me as either affected or desperate. Aunt Bianca has sent the firing squad? He asked. Only the Belgian detachment, said Poirot. Carlo sat up. Then I surrender conditionally. Poirot took the chair opposite him. You oppose the sale of the Madonna? Yes. Why? Carlo glanced at his aunt, then at the ceiling. Because it belonged here. Because my grandfather prayed before it. Because my mother died in the room where it hung. Because once it is sold, we become merely people with a large damp house and better ancestors than prospects. For the first time, the young man's flippancy thinned. I liked him better for it. And because, added the Contessa dryly, he hoped I would sell the Titian instead, which is less portable and therefore harder to steal. Carlo laughed. Aunt, you wound me. I have tried, but you move too quickly. Poirot leaned forward. You knew of Il Gatto Nobile? Everyone knows of him. Half the city claims he is a duke, the other half a gondolier, and both halves are probably being cheated by the same wine merchant. Do you admire him? Carlo hesitated, as one admires a successful mosquito, from a distance. And the note? He frowned. What of it? You found it amusing? Not especially. It sounds like a man trying very hard to sound like himself. Poirot's eyes brightened. Ah, you have intelligence when not borrowing money? Carlo looked genuinely touched. Thank you, I think. The door opened, and Emma Fielding entered carrying a small case of brushes. Seeing Carlo, she stopped. For an instant, something passed between them. Alarm, affection, perhaps both. Hastings, I flatter myself, is not wholly blind in such matters. Poirot saw it too, naturally. Poirot sees romance as a customs officer sees undeclared brandy. Miss Fielding, he said, may we inspect your studio? Of course. The studio had been made from an old dressing room. It smelled of varnish, dust, and turpentine. On a table lay pigments, rags, magnifying lenses, and several small practice panels. Poirot moved among them without touching. You cleaned the Madonna last night? Yes, only surface dirt. The varnish was old, but not dangerously so. And the copy? She lifted her chin. It is excellent, too excellent. In what way? A copyist who wanted to deceive would copy the damage as well as the beauty. Here the craquelure is imitated, but not faithfully. The left side of the child's halo has been improved. No restorer would do that unless he was vain. Or unless, said Poirot, he wished the owner to notice. Emma looked at him sharply. Before she could answer, there came a commotion from below, a male voice protesting, a servant crying out, and the Contessa's unmistakable roar. We hurried down to the entrance hall. A squat man in a brown coat had been seized by the butler and one footman. He had quick black eyes, a little pointed beard, and the expression of a shopkeeper wrongly accused of being honest. Under his arm was a parcel wrapped in oilcloth. The Contessa stood before him like Judgment Day in pearls. "Who are you?" The man grinned. "Madonna mia, Contessa. Is that any way to greet an old friend?" Bellavita gave a soft exclamation. Carlo whispered, "Good Lord." Poirot turned to him. "You know this man?" Carlo's voice dropped. "That is Vincenzo Pirro. They call him the gentleman rat." The man objected. "Cat, signore. Gentleman cat." Poirot's eyes rested on the oilcloth parcel. "Then perhaps," he said, "the mouse has decided to visit us in person." Chapter 3. The Gentleman, Cat Objects. The man in the brown coat bowed with all the dignity possible to a gentleman whose collar was being held by a butler. "Permit me to introduce myself," he said. "Vincenzo Pirro, dealer in small antiquities, consultant in matters of taste, and victim of slander." "Thief," said the Contessa. Pirro placed a hand upon his heart. "Madame, there is theft and there is rescue. A painting hidden in a corridor is rescued. A jewel worn by a lady who eats garlic at breakfast is rescued. A saint's finger kept in a damp box. Stolen," said Bellavita quietly. Pirro smiled at him. "You wound me, Signor Secretary. I have never stolen a finger." Poirot stepped forward. "Messieurs, release him." The butler looked at the Contessa. The Contessa looked at Poirot. Poirot looked at nobody, which, I had learned, usually meant he had won. "Let him go," she snapped. Pirro adjusted his coat and handed Poirot a visiting card. Upon it was printed in elegant lettering, "Vincenzo Pirro, Objects of Devotion, Curiosity, and Family Embarrassment." Below this, in pencil, someone had drawn a cat with a crown. Poirot examined it. "You are il gatto nobile?" Pirro sighed. "In my youth, perhaps, I may have accepted certain compliments from the newspapers. They are sentimental people, journalists. One borrows an ugly little reliquary from a duke, returns it polished, and suddenly one is a criminal legend." "You returned it?" I asked. "Certainly, after the duke had paid his debts. I provide moral education to the aristocracy." The Contessa snorted. "You provide burglary." "Madame, burglary is for men who break windows. I open doors that have lost the will to remain closed." Despite myself, I found the fellow entertaining. Poirot, however, remained unmoved. "And this parcel?" Pirrot's expression changed. "Ah, that is why I came." He placed the oilcloth package on a console table and untied it. Within lay not the stolen Madonna, as I confess I had rather hoped, but a damp black cloak, a pair of soft leather gloves, and a little silver tool shaped like a flattened spoon. The Contessa leaned forward. "Those are yours?" "No." "But they were found with your mark?" Pirro gave her a look of injured artistry. "Madame, a man may be accused of crime. He should not be accused of vulgarity. These gloves are cheap. This cloak was cut by a blind tailor, and this—" He lifted the tool between finger and thumb. "This is not a thief's tool. It is a fish slice that has lost confidence. Carlo laughed before remembering he was a suspect. "Where did you find them?" asked Poirot. "In a boatyard near San Barnaba, hidden under tarpaulin. A boy brought me word this morning. He said a gentleman had left a parcel and told him, 'Give it to the cat if he values his whiskers.' Naturally, I came at once. 'To return the objects?' I said. 'To object,' said Pierrot. 'Someone has used my name. Worse, someone has used it badly.' Poirot looked at the gloves. 'May I?' 'With pleasure. I am innocent of their tailoring.' Poirot turned the gloves inside out. They were stained at the fingertips with the same blue pigment I had seen on Emma Fielding's cuff. Emma gave a sharp breath. 'That is azurite.' The Contessa pounced. 'Your pigment.' 'Half Venice has azurite,' Emma said, "and no thief would wear gloves covered in paint unless he intended them to be found.' Poirot glanced at her approvingly. 'Exactly.' Pierrot looked offended. 'Of course, even an amateur would know to burn them.' 'Thank you,' I said. 'That is a comfort.' Poirot picked up the flattened tool. 'You say this is not for opening locks?' 'No lock would consent to be opened by that. It is for scraping, perhaps, or lifting something thin.' 'Such as a seal?' said Bellavita. Poirot turned to him. 'A good suggestion. Why do you make it?' Bellavita's face did not alter. 'Because the frame was sealed last night.' The Contessa moved to the empty frame. 'The wax seal was broken this morning.' Poirot bent over the frame, then straightened. 'No, not broken, softened.' Emma crossed the room quickly. 'May I see?' She examined the lower edge with a restorer's concentration. 'He's right. The wax has been warmed and pressed back, but clumsily.' 'Not clumsily,' said Poirot, hurriedly. The Contessa looked from one to the other. 'Meaning?' 'Meaning, madame, that the thief wanted it to appear the painting had been removed from the frame during the night. But perhaps it was removed earlier.' Carlo sat down abruptly on a gilt chair, which looked unequal to aristocratic anxiety. 'Earlier?' 'Before the room was locked,' I said. Poirot nodded. 'Or before the copy was ever placed in the room.' There was a silence. It was Pierrot who broke it. 'Ah, that is elegant.' 'Do not admire the crime in my house,' said the Contessa. 'I admire only the composition. The execution is provincial.' Poirot walked to Emma's work table, which had been brought down from the studio. He lifted one of her clean cloths and smelled it. Lavender oil. Varnish. A trace of spirit. 'Miss Fielding, when you examined the picture last night, did you remove it from the frame?' 'No, I was not permitted.' The Contessa said, 'Naturally not.' 'Who was permitted?' 'No one.' 'Then how was the back examined for condition?' Emma hesitated. 'It was not.' Poundstone, who had appeared in the doorway carrying a guidebook, said, 'Now hold on. Didn't the secretary say something about the back?' All eyes turned to Bellavita. The secretary gave a thin smile. 'I said the frame was sealed.' 'No,' said Poundstone. 'At dinner you said the wood panel had suffered old worm damage at the back. I remember because I asked if that lowered the price.' The Contessa stared. 'Bellavita.' He bowed slightly. 'I may have repeated something from an old inventory.' Poirot's voice was mild. 'May we see this inventory?' 'At once.' Bellavita moved to leave. Pierrot, who had been watching him with amusement, said softly, 'Do not take the corridor, Signor Secretary. The loose tile near the stairs will betray your haste.' Bellavita stopped. The effect was slight but unmistakable. Poirot's eyes sharpened. 'You know the loose tile?' he asked Pierrot. Every respectable Venetian knows the loose tiles in houses where there are pictures worth rescuing. "And did you know of one in this house last night?" Piero spread his hands. "Monsieur Poirot, I was dining with a widow in Cannaregio from 9 until 1. She is 72, jealous, and keeps a pistol near the soup. I could not have left without being mourned violently." "Name?" "Donna Agnese Malipiero." The Contessa made a face. "She would shoot him. That part is credible." Bellavita returned with a leather-bound volume. Poirot took it, opened it at the marked page, and studied the entry. Then he smiled. It was a small smile, and consequently alarming. "Madame la Contessa," he said, "your inventory is very complete. It describes the Madonna's size, frame, provenance, condition, and old worm damage, but it omits one important fact." "What fact?" Poirot turned the copy toward the light. "That the Madonna in your family for 400 years was painted on walnut. This copy is painted on poplar." Emma frowned. "Most Bellini school panels are poplar." "Yes," said Poirot, "which means our thief knows art better than your inventory." Piero clicked his tongue. "A thief with education, terrible. They always become sentimental." The Contessa's face had gone hard. "So the copy was made by someone who knew what the original ought to be, but not what it was." "Precisely. And the original?" Poirot closed the inventory. "The original, madame, may not have left the palazzo at all." At this statement, even the canal outside seemed to pause its lapping. Piero looked delighted. Carlo looked ill. Emma looked not at the frame, but at Bellavita. And Bellavita, for the first time since we had met him, looked afraid. A quick reminder about where you can find our stories. Here on YouTube, we now publish 2 stories each week. But on Patreon, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, you can enjoy a new story every single day. We began publishing daily around 3 weeks ago, when we introduced the Midnight Archive, our collection of classic mysteries featuring Sherlock Holmes, Arsène Lupin, Lady Molly, and many others, alongside our original Nocturnal Tales mysteries. As of today, there are already 195 stories available across Patreon, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, with a new one added every day. So, if you would like more stories than we can publish here on YouTube, or if a particular episode is no longer available on the channel, you can still find it on Patreon, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Chapter 4. The Lady Who Knew Too Little. Poirot did not immediately accuse Signor Bellavita. This disappointed the Contessa, who had the air of a woman who considered accusations a form of exercise. "Well?" she demanded. "Is he guilty?" "My dear madame, if I arrested every man who looked frightened in a Venetian palace, I should depopulate the city before dinner." Bellavita's mouth tightened. "I was startled, naturally. Monsieur Poirot suggests the painting may still be here. That would disturb any loyal servant of the house." "Secretary," corrected the Contessa. "Forgive me, Contessa. Secretary." The correction seemed a small thing, but Poirot's eyes flickered. He placed the inventory upon the table with exaggerated care. "We must not run faster than the facts. At present we know only this. A painting has disappeared. A copy has appeared. The famous thief denies stealing badly, and several persons have told the truth only when it became inconvenient not to." Piero bowed. "A fine summary." "Do not encourage him," said the Contessa. Poirot turned to Bellavita. "The old inventory says the original panel was walnut. You knew this?" "I knew the inventory existed." "That is not the same thing." "No. Yet at dinner you spoke of worm damage on the back. I told you I may have remembered—" "From the inventory?" "Yes." Poirot opened the book again and tapped the page. But the inventory does not mention the back. It says simply, worm damage to lower edge. Bellavita was silent. Poundstone, who had remained near the door, whispered to me, "Say, your little man is good." "He prefers great man," I whispered back. "Does he charge by the inch?" I was spared the necessity of defending Poirot's stature by the entrance of a stout maid carrying a tray. She had red hands, suspicious eyes, and the expression of one who had seen too much of aristocracy from below stairs. The Contessa snapped, "Not now, Teresa." The maid halted. "It is for Signor Bellavita, Contessa. His coffee." "At noon?" "He always takes coffee at noon." "Then he may suffer the collapse of civilization for 10 minutes. Teresa turned to leave, but Poirot stopped her. "One moment, mademoiselle. You are Teresa?" "Teresa Bianchi, signore." "You were awake last night?" "I am always awake. In this house one sleeps only after the family has finished inventing trouble." The Contessa looked almost proud. "You heard something?" Teresa shifted the tray. "I heard the water door." "What time?" asked Poirot. "After midnight, perhaps past. Bellavita said sharply, "Why did you not say this earlier?" "Because nobody asked me. Gentlemen ask gentlemen. Ladies accuse ladies. Servants know things." Poirot gave a soft clap. "Brava!" The Contessa rounded on him. "If you applaud my maid again, I shall have you dusted." Poirot's face remained serious. "The water door was opened?" "Yes, but not for long. I heard the hinge." "Could it have been the wind?" Teresa gave him a look which suggested that wind, foreigners and men all failed to understand doors. "No." "Did you see who opened it?" "No, but I heard a cough." "A cough?" "Yes. A little cough. Like this." She gave a dry, delicate cough, covering her mouth with 2 fingers. Poundstone said, "That sounds like Bellavita." Bellavita flushed. "I have no monopoly on coughing." The Contessa said, "No, but you have made a career of it." Poirot considered Teresa. "And did you hear a boat?" "No." "Footsteps?" "No." "Then the door opened and closed?" "Yes." "Thank you." Teresa looked at him, then at the others. "You are not going to ask whether I stole the painting?" "Did you?" "No." "Then why waste your time and mine?" For the first time, Teresa smiled. "You are less stupid than the police." "Madam," said Poirot, bowing, "I shall treasure the distinction." When she had gone, Poirot asked to inspect the water entrance. We descended by a narrow staircase, down into the chill lower part of the palazzo, where the stones sweated and the air smelled of salt, damp wood, and old secrets. The water door opened directly onto a small landing at canal level. Iron rings were fixed to the wall. A strip of green water slapped lazily against the steps. Poirot examined the floor. "No mud," I said. "No," he murmured, "but there is salt." "In Venice?" I said. "Astounding." He gave me a pained look. "Salt in a line, Hastings. Not everywhere. Observe." I bent closer and saw what he meant. A faint pale trace crossed the stone near the door, as though something damp had been dragged and then lifted. "A package?" I suggested. "Possibly. Or a person with wet shoes who wished very much not to be heard." Poirot squatted beside us. "Too narrow for a large canvas." "It is not a canvas," Emma said from the steps behind us. "It is a panel." Poirot glanced up. "Ah, Miss Fielding. You follow investigations?" "I restore pictures. I dislike seeing them treated like laundry." Poirot looked offended. "I have never treated a picture like laundry. Laundry is much easier to steal." Emma ignored him. If the original left by this door, it would have needed protection. Damp ruins tempera quickly. And if it did not leave, then someone wanted us to think it did. Poirot smiled. Good. The young woman flushed slightly. Carlo, who had joined us with the pale determination of a man approaching his banker, saw the flush and became gloomier. We returned upstairs and proceeded to the salon. Poirot asked that everyone who had been present at dinner take their places as they had sat the night before. It was a simple request, but it caused extraordinary difficulty. The Contessa insisted Poundstone had sat too close to the silver. Poundstone maintained he had been placed near the window because he admired local drainage. Carlo said he had sat beside Emma. Emma said he had begun beside her but had been moved after knocking over the pepper. Bellavita said no one had moved. Teresa, summoned again, settled the matter by declaring that all gentry remembered chairs as badly as they paid bills. Finally, order emerged. The Contessa had sat at the head. Poundstone to her right, Bellavita to her left. Carlo and Emma opposite one another, which explained his distress, since it had given him an excellent view of her and no opportunity to whisper. Poirot stood behind Bellavita's chair. From here one sees the Madonna clearly? Yes, said Bellavita. And from here one also sees Miss Fielding cleaning the painting? Of course. But Miss Fielding says the painting was never removed from the frame, therefore no one saw the back. Bellavita said nothing. Poirot moved to the window. Now, last night there was fog. The windows were closed, then opened. By whose order? Mine, said the Contessa. At what time? After dinner. Perhaps 10:30. Why? I have told you. Paintings require air. Emma said quietly, not canal air at night. The Contessa turned. What? Canal air is damp, bad for old panels. The Contessa blinked. You did not say so. I did. You said Venice had preserved itself on canal air for centuries, and the Madonna could show backbone. Poundstone chuckled. That sounds exactly right. Poirot looked amused. Then someone wished the windows open, and someone else may have wished the water door heard. We begin to have too much theatre. Pierrot sighed happily. Venice, monsieur. At that moment a footman appeared. Contessa, a message has come. From whom? The police, Contessa. They have found something. The footman held out an envelope. The Contessa tore it open, read, and gave a cry that was more anger than fear. Well? Asked Carlo. She held up the paper. A painting has been recovered near the Rialto, wrapped in sailcloth and hidden in a wine warehouse. Poundstone clapped his hands together. Then that's grand. No, said Poirot. Everyone looked at him. How can you know? Asked Emma. Poirot's face had become suddenly still. Because, mademoiselle, the person who arranged this affair is intelligent, and an intelligent person does not hide the real object where the police are meant to find it. The Contessa lowered the letter. Then what have they found? Poirot took his hat and cane. Almost certainly, he said, our second Madonna. Chapter 5. The Second Madonna. The wine warehouse stood behind the Rialto in a lane so narrow that Mr. Poundstone, upon accompanying us, was obliged to turn sideways and proceed like a large moral objection. I don't see why I had to come, he complained. Because, said the Contessa, who had insisted upon coming also, if the painting is damaged, I wish you to witness your dollars evaporating. Countess, my dollars are innocent. No dollar is innocent, it is merely inexperienced. The police had placed a young inspector in charge of the discovery. He was a handsome fellow with waxed moustaches, polished boots, and the tragic disadvantage of knowing it. His name was Inspector Rinaldi, and he greeted Poirot with that mixture of courtesy and irritation which policemen reserve for private detectives and foreign sources. "Monsieur Poirot, we have recovered the stolen work." "Have you?" said Poirot. Rinaldi's moustache stiffened. "It was found wrapped in sailcloth behind a stack of wine barrels. The warehouse owner denies all knowledge. Naturally." "Naturally?" said Poirot. "No warehouse owner ever knows what is in his warehouse. It is an ancient commercial principle." The Contessa pushed past us. "Show me." The painting had been placed upon a crate beneath a hanging lamp. It was the Madonna, or appeared to be. The same serene face, the same child, the same golden glow. But even I, after one day in this affair, had learned to distrust Madonnas which appeared too conveniently. Emma Fielding arrived a moment later, breathless, with Carlo beside her. She had come, she said, because the police had asked for identification. Carlo had come because Emma had come, which was perhaps less official but more human. Emma bent over the panel. "Well?" demanded the Contessa. The girl did not answer immediately. She took a small lens from her bag, examined the surface, then the edge, then the back. At last she stood upright. "It is not yours." Rinaldi looked offended. "Signorina, you have had 30 seconds. And the thief had had several weeks. He still made mistakes." "What mistakes?" "The varnish is wrong. The craquelure has been scratched, not aged, and the child's left ear is sentimental." Poundstone looked bewildered. "Can an ear be sentimental?" "In bad painting," said Poirot, "all things are possible." Rinaldi frowned. "You are saying this is another copy?" "Yes," said Emma. The Contessa struck the crate with her cane. "Two false Madonnas. I have become a wholesale dealer in disappointment." Poirot was studying the sailcloth. "This wrapping. Where was it found?" "Exactly as you see it," said Rinaldi, "around the painting." "Too neat." The inspector's moustache trembled. "Too neat." "Yes. A man concealing a stolen masterpiece in a wine warehouse does not wrap it as though sending it to an aunt for Christmas." Piero, who had slipped in silently behind us, murmured, "Unless he dislikes the aunt." Rinaldi spun round. "You!" Piero bowed. "Inspector, you are looking prosperous. Has crime been good to you? I should arrest you. You say this whenever we meet. It is becoming flirtation." Rinaldi reddened. "This man is a known criminal." "Known," said Piero, "but seldom proved. There is a distinction. It is the foundation of civilization." Poirot held up a hand. "Messieurs, let us not waste the afternoon proving what everyone already suspects. Monsieur Piero, do you recognize this copy?" Piero examined it, then made a face. "Not my circle." "Your circle?" I said. "There are artists who copy for love, artists who copy for hunger, and artists who copy because their mothers praised them too much. This is the third." Emma looked at him with reluctant interest. "You know the hand?" "Perhaps. Whose?" Piero smiled. "Signorina, if I gave names freely, I would have to become respectable. I am not dressed for it." The Contessa raised her cane. "If you know who painted this—" "Madame, I know who did not. It was not the same hand as the copy in your salon." That silenced us. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Explain." "The one in the palazzo is careful, cold. It imitates because it wishes to deceive. This one performs. It says, 'Look at me. I am old. I am tragic. I belong in a museum. Admire my suffering.'" Carlo muttered, "I know people like that." The Contessa said, "You owe money to people like that." Poirot turned to Emma. "Do you agree?" She hesitated. "Yes. The brushwork is different. This copy is theatrical. The first was scholarly." "Then we have two copyists," I said. "Or one director," said Poirot, "and two actors." Inspector Rinaldi crossed his arms. The simple explanation is that Il Gatto Nobile stole the original, left one copy behind, then abandoned another copy here to confuse us. Piero looked wounded. Inspector, if I wish to confuse you, I would ask you to read a map. The inspector took one step forward. Poirot inserted himself between them with perfect calm. There is another question. Who informed the police? Rinaldi paused. An anonymous note. Written? Typed? Delivered? Left at the station? Poirot nodded slowly. Of course. Why of course? I asked. Because handwriting has already betrayed one person. A typewriter is the cowardice of experience. Emma looked sharply at him. You know whose handwriting was on the cat note? I know whose handwriting it was not. This, I confess, did little to satisfy me. Poirot has a genius for producing light without heat. We returned to the Palazzo Varano in a mood of general dissatisfaction. The recovered copy was brought with us at the Contessa's command, despite Rinaldi's protests that it was evidence. My dear Inspector, she said, in Venice everything is evidence. The difficulty is finding anything that is proof. Back at the Palazzo, the two false Madonnas were set side by side in the salon. The first, the one left in the frame, seemed quieter and more devout. The second seemed brighter, more eager, as if it were applying for the position of masterpiece. Poirot asked that no one speak. This was optimistic. The Contessa muttered about insurance. Poundstone asked whether the existence of two copies reduced or increased the value of the original. Carlo said it depended whether one was American. Emma told him not to be foolish. Piero admired a side table and was ordered to step away from it. Only Bellavita said nothing. He stood near the curtains, pale and correct, his hands folded before him. Poirot watched him for some time, then walked suddenly to the escritoire by the window. This is where you kept the key to the salon, madame. Yes. Locked? Always. Who has keys to the escritoire? I do. And Bellavita? The Contessa hesitated. He has a duplicate for household papers. Bellavita spoke at once, with the Contessa's permission. Poirot opened the little drawers one by one. Papers, sealing wax, household accounts, invitations, a broken fan, and several letters tied with green ribbon. Then, from the back of the lowest drawer, he drew out a small scrap of blotting paper. He held it to the light. "What is it?" asked Carlo. Poirot did not answer. He took from his pocket the card bearing the black cat and placed the blotting paper beside it. On the blotting paper, faint but legible, was the reversed impression of several words. She was suffocating in bad company. The Contessa turned slowly toward Bellavita. You wrote the note. Bellavita's face had gone grey. No. Piero sighed. An unfortunate word, no, so rarely persuasive. Bellavita swallowed. I mean, yes, I copied the wording, but I did not steal the painting. The Contessa lifted her cane. You forged the thief's note in my house? For your protection. This remarkable statement produced a silence. Bellavita seemed to realize how it sounded. He took a step forward. I received a warning yesterday. A real warning. Someone meant to steal the Madonna before the exhibition. I wrote the note to make it appear Il Gatto had taken it. If the thief believed he had been forestalled, he might reveal himself. Poundstone blinked. That is either very clever or profoundly Italian. The Contessa said coldly, and you did not tell me. You would have shouted. I am shouting now. Yes, Contessa, that is what I feared. Poirot's face was unreadable. This warning, from whom? Bellavita hesitated. Then from the doorway Teresa's voice said, From me. The maid stood there, her red hands folded in her apron, her eyes steady. "I told him," she said, "because I saw the man in the passage." "What man?" asked the Contessa. Teresa looked not at Bellavita, nor at Carlo, nor at Piero. She looked at Mr. Poundstone. The American. Chapter 6. The Cat, the Mouse, and the Madonna. Mr. Ezra Poundstone received Teresa's accusation with an expression of wounded patriotism. "Me? My good woman, I came to Europe to buy art, not creep around hallways like a hotel ghost." "You were in the passage," said Teresa. "At what hour?" asked Poirot. "After midnight." Poundstone drew himself up. "I did leave my room, I admit it. I was looking for hot water." "In a Venetian palace?" said the Contessa. "You might as well look for mercy." "I found neither. Then I saw someone near the salon door." "Who?" asked Poirot. Poundstone pointed, not at Bellavita, but at Carlo. The young man sprang up. "That is absurd." "Maybe so," said Poundstone, "but it had your figure. Slim, guilty, aristocratic." "My dear sir," said Carlo, "that describes half the men in Venice." Emma had gone very pale. Poirot looked at her. "Mademoiselle, now is the time for economy, not with the truth." Carlo said quickly, "Leave her out of this." "Ah," said Poirot, "that is rarely useful advice." The Contessa turned slowly toward her nephew. "Carlo?" He looked wretched. "I did not steal it." "No," said Poirot. "You borrowed it." There was a silence so complete that one heard the slap of canal water below. Poirot placed the two false Madonnas side by side. "Let us arrange the facts. The first copy, the scholarly one, was made by Miss Fielding. Not last night, but over several weeks. It was not intended as a fraud. It was intended as a substitute." Emma's eyes filled with tears, though her voice remained steady. "Yes." Carlo took her hand. "I asked her. I could not bear the thought of the Madonna going to Chicago." Poundstone objected. "Chicago has improved." "Not enough," said the Contessa. Carlo swallowed. "I planned to hide the original for one night, only one. The sale would be delayed. Aunt Bianca would rage. Then perhaps she would sell something else." "My ancestors," said the Contessa. "They are already dead, Carlo. They fetch nothing." Poirot continued. "Miss Fielding removed the original before dinner, when she was supposedly examining the surface. She placed her copy in the frame. That is why the copy was painted on poplar. She copied what a Bellini school painting should be, not what this particular family panel was. She had never been permitted to study the back." Emma nodded miserably. "The original is walnut. I discovered that only after." "And where did you put it?" asked the Contessa. "In Carlo's room," said Poirot. "Behind the old leather screen." Carlo stared. "How the devil—" "The salt on the lower landing. You came down with the panel wrapped against damp, intending to pass it to a boatman. But you lost courage, or sense, perhaps both. You carried it back upstairs by the servants' passage. A man in love becomes athletic and stupid." Piero murmured, "A diagnosis known to medicine." "But then," I said, "who sent the second copy to the police?" Poirot smiled. "There enters the true criminal comedy. Signor Bellavita received from Teresa a warning that an American had been seen wandering. He feared a theft. He wrote the false note in the name of Il Gatto Nobile, hoping to frighten the unknown thief or cover the painting until he understood matters. But by then the original had already vanished from the frame. He did not know Carlo had it." Bellavita bowed his head. "I meant to protect the Contessa." "You meant," said the Contessa, "to protect your position." "That too," he admitted. Poirot touched the brighter theatrical Madonna. The second copy was supplied by our friend Piero. The room exploded. Piero lifted both hands. Supplied, yes. Stolen, no. There is an ethical difference large enough for a gondola. Poirot nodded. Piero heard his name had been used. He wished to discover who was clumsy enough to impersonate him. He placed a second false Madonna where the police would find it, forcing the real players to gather here and contradict one another. Piero looked pleased. Monsieur Poirot understands art. I understand vanity, said Poirot. It is more useful. The Contessa stared from Carlo to Emma. So, my nephew and his beloved restorer conspired to save the family honor by committing a felony in my drawing room. Carlo said, I am sorry. Emma said, It was my fault. Do not be gallant, snapped the Contessa. It is irritating when poor people do it, and expensive when family does. Poundstone cleared his throat. Countess, I don't much care for buying grief. If the picture means that much to the young man. It means nothing of the kind, said the Contessa. He has never paid a tax bill in his life. Poirot raised one finger. There remains one point. The Madonna has not merely sentimental value. It has been altered. Emma looked up. Yes. The old varnish concealed an inscription. I found it while cleaning. Poirot nodded. On the lower edge, a dedication, not to the Varano family. The Contessa frowned. To whom? Emma whispered. To a convent at San Lazzaro. It may have been taken during Napoleon's occupation. The Contessa sat down. For once, she did not speak. Piero removed his hat. That is awkward, he said softly. Even for Venice. Poirot's voice became gentler. Madame, your family possessed the Madonna for 400 years, but perhaps not always rightly. The Contessa looked old then, but only for a moment. She recovered herself like a queen retrieving a dropped crown. Very well. The sale is cancelled. The lawyers will investigate. If the convent has a claim, it shall be considered. If it does not, the Madonna stays here. Carlo breathed out. And us? You will marry Miss Fielding. Carlo blinked. I beg your pardon. Do not beg. It weakens the blood. You will marry her, find employment, and stop rescuing art like a wet spaniel. Emma blushed crimson. And I? Asked Bellavita. The Contessa looked at him. You will continue as my secretary. But from now on, you will forge nothing except excuses for why I cannot receive boring people. Bellavita bowed, visibly relieved. Poundstone sighed. Then I go home without a Madonna. You may buy the Ming vase, said the Contessa. The broken one? It is historical. Napoleon cracked it. Miss Fielding completed the narrative. Poundstone considered. How much? The Contessa smiled for the first time that day. Poirot took my arm and led me toward the balcony. You see, Hastings, all is restored. Restored? There were 2 forged paintings, 1 false confession, a staged theft, a nearly stolen masterpiece, and a marriage arranged by threat. Yes, said Poirot, Venice is a city of compromises. Below us, a gondola slid past in the evening light. Piero stood at the water door, preparing to depart. Signor Piero, called Poirot. The little man turned. One question. Did you ever intend to steal the original? Piero looked wounded. Monsieur, I am a professional. I never steal from houses already stealing from themselves. And with that, he stepped into the boat and vanished beneath the bridge, leaving behind only a ripple, a bow, and the faint impression that Venice had quietly applauded. Epilogue. The Real Gentleman. Thief of Venice. The case of the Madonna who took the air was inspired, very loosely, by the exploits of Vincenzo Pipino, Venice's notorious gentleman thief. Pipino was not a Poirot-era criminal. His most famous theft took place in 1991 when he stole a Madonna col Bambino, an early 16th-century work associated with the Vivarini school, from the Doge's palace in Venice. According to accounts of the affair, he entered as a visitor, lagged behind during the tour of the prison area, hid in a cell, waited until night, crossed back through the Bridge of Sighs into the palace, took the painting, covered it, and left by a side door. The real affair was stranger than respectable fiction. Pipino later connected the theft to pressure from the Mala del Brenta, a violent Venetian criminal organization, and claimed he chose the Doge's palace theft as a less violent alternative to an armed museum robbery. The painting was returned within about a month, though the stories surrounding its recovery became almost theatrical. One version involved a forged copy, a second theft, and even tigers guarding the picture, a tale Pipino himself later denied in part. Pipino cultivated the image of a thief with rules: no violence, no weapons, a preference for robbing the rich, and a certain contempt for aristocrats who hoarded art behind palace walls. In later interviews, he described this philosophy himself, while admitting that it was, in his own words, a flawed excuse for theft. For this Poirot adaptation, the date, characters, motive, and mechanics have been changed. The real Pipino belonged to late 20th century Venice, not the interwar world of Poirot and Hastings. But the essential ingredients were too good to waste: the Doge's palace, a sacred-looking Madonna, a thief with vanity and manners, a city built like a maze, and the splendid Venetian idea that even crime should have style. In truth, Venice has always suited this kind of story. It is beautiful, theatrical, decaying, secretive, and faintly absurd. A city where a painting may disappear through a palace door, a thief may call himself a philosopher, and everyone involved may still pause to argue about taste. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of The Cat, the Mouse, and the Madonna. This was a case in which everyone stole something, except perhaps the professional thief, who had the decency to object on artistic grounds. Carlo borrowed the Madonna to keep it from leaving Venice. Emma painted the first copy out of love, loyalty, and a dangerous misunderstanding of criminal law. Bellavita forged the cat's note not because he was brave, but because panic, when dressed as devotion, can look almost respectable. And Vincenzo Pirro, our gentleman cat, supplied the second false Madonna for the purest motive available to a vain man. He could not bear to see his name used badly. What mattered in the end was not merely which Madonna was real, but who had the right to call it theirs. The clue lay not only in walnut and poplar, blue pigment and warmed wax, but in the uncomfortable inscription beneath the varnish. A small buried truth suggesting that the family treasure may once have belonged somewhere else. In a lesser house, this would have ended in shouting, scandal, and lawyers. In the Palazzo Varano, naturally, it ended in shouting, scandal, lawyers, an arranged marriage, and the attempted sale of a broken Ming vase to an American. If you stayed for the epilogue, you know that the real inspiration behind this fiction was stranger, later, and more slippery than any neat detective plot. Vincenzo Pipino, the Venetian thief who cultivated the manners of a rogue philosopher and whose theft of a Madonna from the Doge's palace helped make him a legend of criminal theatricality. Our story changes the era, the people, and the motive, but keeps the irresistible ingredients. Venice, a sacred painting, a thief with vanity, a palace full of lies, and the sense that even crime in that impossible city feels obliged to dress well. If this kind of mystery stayed with you, the ones where the corpse is absent, the weapon is a paintbrush, and the real question is not who stole it, but who deserved to keep it. Tell us in the comments what you make of the Contessa's final decision. Should the Madonna remain in the palace, return to the convent, or be removed from everyone who thought beauty was a family receipt. If you love losing yourself in these long-form mysteries, don't let commercial breaks ruin the suspense. For the cost of a single coffee, just $2.99 a month, our Patreon members enjoy every episode completely ad-free, along with early access to new cases. Click the Patreon link in the description to claim your seat by the fireside tonight. For now, thank you again for staying with us to the last line. Until the next case, be wary of secretaries with blotting paper. Never trust a masterpiece that has improved its own halo. And remember, in Venice, even a thief may have principles, but a palace will always have more doors than truth.